Hello, child. You've strayed too far from the path, and now trapped between the mirror and the thorns of the hedge. Welcome to Down the Rabbit Hole, a narrative horror podcast set in the world of Changeling, the Lost. Due to adult language and violent nature of the stories told, this podcast is rated M for mature, and we strongly encourage listener discretion.
Episode 6, Wet Dreams.
I'm not comfortable being in someone else's head. I don't like you being in my head, but if I don't lead you out, we're both trapped here. Just keep your head down and everything will be coming up black roses before you know it. Compared to some of the other things that go bump in the night, we're a small society, changelings, but we do have precautions in place, and we have certain structures for when things go down. Like soon as a freehold discovers a new member of the Lost, you get quarantined the politest way that an ogre can manage into a place called the Tracks. Old tracks in Long Island City that they don't use no more. I think there's a microbrewery there now, or some artisanal crepe shop or organic grilled cheese gastro pub. The changelings who will end up making up your new publicly secret life, they stand around you. Psychologists will talk to you, see when you were taken, how far down the rabbit hole of crazy you are, whether you're between Alice talking to the doorknob or the goddamn Cheshire Cat himself. After the normal test, dreamscapers are gonna come in and poke in your head without your permission, just to make sure you don't still work for the keepers. You'd think this level of screening would keep all the mushy gourds out of the garden, but the worst part about being a changeling? We're clever. Wherever there's a system, we go around it, kiddo. That's our specialty. Back in my day, when I would have been young enough and dumb enough to believe in magic or fairies or shit like that, depression was fleeting. It was an emotion, not a disposition. My day, anxiety was something literary characters could only feel in a Jane Austen novel. Mood swings, they just made you eccentric or queer. We had blanket terms for everything. The term was alcoholic. My day, you went to work. Of course, there were jobs back then. You came home and you dealt with it, because you had to do it the next day. We didn't have sick days or mental health days. You had days your family suffered or starved because you were weak. You spend enough time in your own head painting mandalas or arguing semantics about magic, you lose touch. My day, you got through the day. That's all you had to do. People talk shit, you shrugged it off. Anywhere that people settle, they find a ritual or a justification for their guilt. Some cultures write their sins or regrets on paper, and then they burn them or they send them down the river somewhere. Older peoples, they could fashion fetishes or dream catchers or spiritual tar babies to avoid their bad juju from sticking to their souls like fly paper. Some of them they flat out deny it or deflect it until they can ferment something and drink the regret away. Oh, I'm sorry, you glued to your phone foppish skid mark. You think I'm glorifying the good old days? Which ones? The decades where we lived in fear of nuclear annihilation from the Ruskies? The riots in the streets as the young revolted against those in power over a war neither side wanted? How about the generation of people locked away for talking about an ounce of marijuana which was legal back in Prohibition? You want to judge us? Or think we thought everything was hunky-dory by the TV stars of the black and white? No, their faces are practically spackled in stage makeup. It's soaking up the crocodile tears of their time before they could even be shed. That ain't the truth. The media, the songs, just a distraction from how you feel, like your fucking phone. There were no good old days, 'cause people were always involved. You think they were good? You're just choosing ignorance. My day, you walked on thin ice above the horror of the times because you could always drink. My day, You expected to fall through the ice. That's why we damned ourselves. And that was before the mages and the fairies and the werewolves and vampires and everything else looked me in the eye, gave a Black Widow's wink, and gently set the curtain back in front of the Wizard of Oz. And I never wanted to touch the curtain again. So, where did we leave off last time, kiddo? Kip's dream? The city project with the pipes? Concrete ribcage? Pete still has a sword? Okay. Looking around under my swelled feet, I notice a spiral of ants and bees. A few dried animal carcasses are scattered in the courtyard in front of the building. A bulge in my pocket tells me that the goblin fruit I brought is already rotted. It wetly plops on the ground, and within a second it's swarmed, flattened under a writhing blanket of shells and legs and unblinking insect eyes. "Time's a-wasting, Groot," I called to Pete. "Let's go." Pete points to a weird black patch on his forearm. Looks like something's trying to bud there, take root. We gotta move, and we gotta move fast. Inside of the building, the lobby's pretty much what I expected. Overgrown in kudzu and thick grapevines, the kind that anything could scurry under. Lightning bugs are flickering along the ceiling, providing a strobing blue ambiance. What I don't expect is the front desk, like a receptionist at a hotel. Only compass we have now is the clay heart, so I take it out again. Let me refresh your memory. Hardened clay, bisected right in the center, half black, half red. Tiny wristwatch face pressed into the dead center. Entire thing has gold-colored yarn wrapped around it several times and hot glued into place. I was hoping once we got inside, the heart would guide us. But then again, when has the heart ever steered somebody in the right direction? But there's a dragging noise, and the distant shifting of grass. Something I can't see is moving toward us. I duck behind the front desk, and I wait until my knees moan steadily that my legs have fallen asleep. I hold my breath, breathing in 4, holding it in for 7, exhaling it for 8. Old technique I learned from my blood pressure. Helped me escape from my keeper not so long ago once upon a time. And then something floats past us, and I bite my hand so as not to gag when I see it. Maybe 6 feet tall, its bottom billows out into a fleshy skirt that hovers above the grass. Lithe, feminine shape, but covered in bells and exposed veins. The head is a circular mound covered in human eyes of all colors. Its long fingers extend in front of it, like it's moving through blindly. But there's no way it can be blind with all those eyes. Once in a while, something flickers out from all odd sides of the head, like a snake tongue or a tendril out of some deep-sea anemone. Then I get it. It's tasting the air. Okay, this kind of makes sense. You know, sight only gets you so far, especially from a race of people where nothing is as it seems. For Kip, this would be the perfect form. 360-degree vision, free-floating, sensing everything around her at once. This must be her dream security guard. My best bet is to keep away from it. Don't want it to know I'm here. It hovers in front of the staircase leading up, its eyes fixed on everything but seeing nothing. I remember how Kip would use her contracts of fang and talon to enhance her senses. Shark parts to feel electrical movements for invisible darklings, bat ears or something dolphin in her throat giving her echolocation, mosquito parts to sense carbon dioxide emissions from anywhere within the building, 'cause everybody still gotta breathe. No one snuck up on her. Too bad I'm here to do just that. Just as soon as this floating bride of Frankenstein / beholder hobgoblin gets out of my way. Once it passes, I become aware of Pete again. If he's still and he's surrounded by tall grass, you'll never see him. He motions toward his sword. I shake my head at him. We're gonna have to use the territory to our advantage. He looks at his arm again. The sticky black stain on his arm now has 2 tiny roses, black as midnight, budding in real time out of his skin. "We'll get out of this, I promise," I tell him, lying through my teeth. I lay the heart on the ground. It rotates and it dashes toward the elevator in the lobby. We get to the 10th floor and the heart starts tapping the elevator door like a reader on a Ouija board or a dog that wants to go out. Entire 10th floor has tall grass, naturally, and the clay heart moves to the right, stopping in front of 10C at the end of the hall. Entire door is covered in mangrove roots, tall, woody, and red like sandstone. Feels just as sturdy, too. We need to get into this apartment. Why? Because dream logic. I look back at Pete, and Mr. Moss weaves his hand. Just like Magic Mike working with a dick, the roots twist away from the door at 10C. With a steadying breath, I twist the handle and open the door. Looks like the prop department under a theater. Old bureaus and shelves piled with empty photo frames, yellowed newspapers, and fast food wrappers. Saying the apartment is a rat's nest would probably insult the rats. I still go inside. 3 bedrooms. One door has a bunny drawn in crayon near the bottom. Bingo. I open the door and... a cliff in a forest. One lone tree looks down, roots creeping over the edge. Christ, I hate heights. Pete looks down while I can't, and he tells me there's a straw man wrapped in the vines below. Now, you ever see a spider catching something while it's alive in its web? It's gonna jump at the fly, wraps it in its web, rolls it, bites it over, and comes back later once the fly's been digested from the inside out. That's the impression I get looking at the hanging figure. And yet, the clay heart is kicking my hand, trying to get out. I think this is it. This is where the heart was meant to be. This is where it wants to be. We're almost home free. I shrug and I chuckle, but after a silence I look up, and Pete has the sword drawn. In a heavy swing, he chops at the tree. "What are you doing, idiot?" I cry out. Pete says it's part of the deal that he made with the Autumn Court. What? No, you couldn't have. And he asks me how I think Lady Feng knew where to find us and why they only took me. Because he called them again while I was in the shower that night, and he made a deal. He tells me that I have 2 options right now. I can give up the search and walk away, or I die here. Pete tells me how Hatchwatch contacted him and offered him Kip's position if he could ensure that she never came back. "You're turning your back on your own people, you backstabbing dingleberry!" I tell him. "You know the Autumn Court's gonna double-cross you first chance they get. Look at how quickly Stan dropped Kip." Pete says my reputation has been holding him back from getting work, from getting help from the community. He says I don't even know when I steal or how much. He says I don't even admit that I know I'm doing it. He says I fucked myself by forcing the pledge with Hatchwatch in the first place. He raises the sword again, and as much as I hate his guts right now, I want him to hit me. I just want it over. But there's a fire alarm alongside the wall behind Pete. I just need him to swing one more time, but my feet are so shredded I'm gonna have to roll for it. Pete swings down ungracefully, and I hit the alarm on the wall. Shrillness fills the air and invades my head. Pete grabs my shoulders and slides me up the wall. I can't see anything in his yellow eyes but hate. The bark around his face is already turning black, and tiny thorns are prickling out of the side of his face. My best friend. Something scaly and ribbed like a clam tongue slaps through the open door and smacks Pete alongside the head. He doesn't turn fast enough, and he gets sprayed in the face by something glistening like string. I drop as the freak show from before reaches through the door and clutches at Pete, uprooting him by the feet and dragging him into the hallway in one swipe. I slam the door shut once Pete gets pulled through. I press against the door, hearing the desperate kicks, the cries, shrieks, and crunching. and I fall into a familiar place of hating myself forever. The sons of bitches never done taking from me. Took away my reputation, my home, my family, and now my only friend. Fuck. This is a dream. This is just a dream. But even if I have to wake up from it, even if I do, nothing's gonna matter. Nothing's gonna change. I have nowhere to go. So I stare off the cliff, and the stillness of the void, boundless and deathless, echoes how I feel. I need to wait a while before I move again. I didn't want this. At the edge of the cliff, I lower the clay hot to the scarecrow. Its chest closes. There's a shimmer and a glimmer over it like distant heat waves. It shakes over it, and the human mask becomes flesh as eyes blink themselves open and it begins breathing. Kip's human face paints itself in a shade of panic before it looks up and calls to me. "Bunyip!" I call down, and the fetch nods incessantly. I tell it to stay calm and pull itself up slowly. Once it reaches the top, the fetch that thinks it's Kip hugs me. It fucking hugs me. Gotta admit, I'm surprised. It thinks it's Kip. And even under the dirty crunching of weeds and hay embracing me, well, at least someone's happy to fucking see me. I tell the fetch, "Welcome home," and she gets quiet. She turns her head. She asks if I can hear the music in the distance, like humming, like singing, like twinkling. I say no. She stands and she takes me by the hand. And I know it's not a real hand, and this is not a real person, and there is no sincere kindness behind this gesture. But I let her lead me. I stop thinking of this version of Kip as an it, and start thinking of it as a her. She asks me how I am, how's Pete, and I don't have the strength left to lie. She hugs my face against the side of her chest and tells me it's okay to feel hurt. We walk alongside the cliff edge until the wall at my side gives way and a path leads to something familiar, but overgrown. We come to train tracks, just like the tracks, but raised, newly built, and covered in luscious greens like after a rainstorm. Fetch Kip tells me that we should wait, and after a while, a light wanders down the tracks, and Fetch Kip hops down, thanking me. The light turns out to be a lantern, held tightly by a thin figure wearing a hooded cloak. In my back pocket, I take out the coin from the wishing well, and I toss it back to Fetch Kip. The Fetch Kip catches it, and she begins to tell a story.
Once upon a time, a girl who could never be found grew up to become a woman lost to love. But she did fall in love once with a gentleman with strong, hairy shoulders who smelled of fresh hay and dried lilac. One day, when she professed her honest feelings, he was taken from her, and she swore to find him. She made a bullish wish, against all odds, in a well that wished ill of others. She crafted a false heart and hid it within a doll version of herself. This doll thought it was the woman, but whose hollow, empty soul was a lightning rod for the woman's sins. The woman locked herself within the endless maze within the box of her own mind, and walked the M.C. Escher-like dreamscape of her doll to bait the trap. She met an empty man of great position, the wandering poet's dream. He lit the paths for the lost with a lantern that lit every space like autumn's twilight. After befriending him, he passed his mantle on to her and gifted his hood, his mask, his belt, and his lantern. She took his place, and the weaver of dreams whispered, "I'm proud of you, child."
and collapsed into a pile of loose leggings, straps, socks, belts, and zip ties. The woman scattered the ashes of her journal and held her fake heart up front for the word to claim. And just as he had promised, the man, her lover, switched places with her scapegoat. The fake woman would be a slave to a beast of red and black, and the man would be reunited with the woman. They embraced on the path, but had no way out of the dream that held them. For while she had her wild prince, the doll, whose mind hosted them, would never wake. But they had each other. And so, the beast and his beauty walked off into the mists of the dreaming to become another legend.
And then I realized I was able to leave the dreamscape, which either meant Kip stopped blocking others from entering and leaving, or, worst case scenario, the Autumn Court must have moved the Fetch's body, so it stopped dreaming. Didn't see anything, though. All I found was a pile of rags and belts and some rose petals, all stained black. Let's be clear of something. This is not a victory. I didn't win this one. At least I don't feel like I won anything. All I sowed was seeded from distrust. And I don't know why I'm so surprised that distrust was all I reaped. Shit harvest. Shit harvest from a shit farmer.
I think you're being too hard on yourself, Woodrow. I thought it was a good story. You got a weird imagination, but I like it.
So what? You gonna comfort me? They played me and killed my best friend.
The man I used to trust betrayed me as well. Tried burying that regret, but it resurfaced. Seems in the long run it's my cross to bear, my sin to eat. I'm sorry about what happened to you. I really am. So what are you gonna do now that this, Autumn Court is back in power?
Had enough of the city. Sell the truck. Head upstate. What, you blame me?
Not at all. If anything, I envy you for getting the hell out before shit really hits the fan. Halloween is approaching, and fast, and it ain't all pumpkin spice and cider donuts as the Brooklynites will tell you. But hey, if it's any consolation,
it ain't. If you think you could make me feel better, Robbie, then dream on.
Fair enough. You and I ain't the kind to believe in happy endings anyway. But I think you saved that girl. Thanks for letting me crash on your couch.
Piss off. And so ends this part of the story, child. If you'd like input on the past and the future of Chroniclers of Darkness, keep your eyes peeled on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Uncle Yo. As for Uncle Yo himself, he'll be performing at the House in the Hollow haunted house on Active Acres Farm in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, all weekend long. Next weekend, he'll be performing at KumoriCon in Portland, Oregon. That's October 28th through 30th. 5 panels on gaming, anime, and geek-centered stand-up comedy. You know what we do best. Come out in droves and remember to seal the exits. Next week, just for you, child, we're going all out in a crossover of all 3 of our previous chronicles. So listen to the backlog of episodes and remember, if you can guess all the song references in any single episode, venture a guess in the comments section below the video, and we'll send you both original theme songs composed exclusively for the podcast. Now then, take it away, Corinne.
Down the Rabbit Hole is part of the Chroniclers of Darkness. It is written by Uncle Yo. Original music and production by Jimmy Lynn. Special thanks to Eliza Rickman for permission to use her music. Find her and become entranced by her at elizarickman.com. Thanks to White Wolf Publishing and Onyx Path Publishing for this elegant game of beautiful madness. Comments? Questions? Hollows for rent? Say your name 3 times into a dark bathroom mirror. Trust us, the gentry are listening. This podcast is produced thanks to Patreons like you. Join us at patreon.com/UncleYo or contact us at facebook.com/UncleYo. Thanks for any shares, retweets, likes, and tokens. Game on. Include everyone. And remember that death is more merciful than the keepers. Catch you next week.
Waste your time on me. Hear the